Moving to a new city for college, I found a charming little apartment that seemed perfect for a young woman like me. It was cozy, with an old-world charm, but there was something about it that felt off from the moment I moved in. The building was quiet, almost eerily so, and the neighbors kept to themselves. But it was the woman who lived across the hall from me that really set the creepy vibes in motion. I'd occasionally catch glimpses of her through her half-open door, just standing there staring. Her long, unkempt hair covered most of her face, and her eyes were always fixated on me. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just socially awkward or dealing with some personal issues. But as the days turned into weeks, her behavior grew more unsettling. She started leaving strange notes at my doorstep, always in the middle of the night. The notes were filled with cryptic messages like, "I see you, and you're not alone." I tried to avoid her, but every time I stepped out of my apartment, there she was, lurking in the hallway. Her presence became an unshakable shadow, haunting my every move. I was beginning to feel like a prisoner in my own home. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard strange noises coming from the hallway. Soft, deliberate footsteps, like someone was tiptoeing. Cautiously, I cracked open my bedroom door, and there she was, standing just outside. Her face was barely visible beneath her hair, and her pale, thin fingers clutched the doorframe. My heart raced, and I slammed the door shut, locking it and dialing 911. The dispatcher assured me that an officer would be on their way, but the wait felt like an eternity. When I finally heard the knock at the door, I breathed a sigh of relief and unlocked it, only to find the officer standing face to face with the mysterious woman. She was dressed in a torn, tattered dress, and her disheveled hair was tangled with leaves and dirt. She stared at the officer with hollow eyes. The officer tried to engage her in conversation, but her responses were incoherent, like she was speaking in tongues. Her voice was an eerie, whispery murmur that sent chills down my spine. The police officer called for backup, and 2 more officers arrived to restrain her and escort her out of the building. I watched in terror as they struggled to control her, her screams echoing through the hallway. I never found out what drove this woman to stalk me, and to this day, I can't shake the feeling that there's something more to the story. My charming little apartment became a living nightmare, a place where the line between reality and horror blurred. I've since moved to a new place, far away from that old apartment and its lingering shadows. But the memories of those haunting days continue to haunt my dreams, a chilling reminder that sometimes the creepiest horrors are those that lurk in the most unexpected places. California had always been our dream destination, and after months of searching, my wife and I finally found our perfect little slice of paradise. The house was nestled in a serene suburban neighborhood with stunning views of the Pacific Ocean. It seemed like the ideal place to start our new life together. Our neighbor, Mr. Wallace, was the first to welcome us. He seemed friendly, offering a warm smile and a plate of freshly baked cookies. He chatted about the local community and gave us the lowdown on the area, which was super helpful. But as the days turned into weeks, we began to realize that Mr. Wallace was far from ordinary. Each interaction with him left us feeling more uneasy. He would pop up at our door at odd hours, often with bizarre, unrelated stories to tell. His eyes held a vacant, distant gaze that didn't quite match his friendly demeanor. One evening, I was jolted awake by the terrified screams of my wife, Sarah. She was pointing at the window, gasping, her face pale with terror. I followed her trembling finger and saw a silhouette outside, clutching a camera, taking pictures of us while we slept. I leaped out of bed and bolted towards the window, just in time to see the figure vanish into the night. My heart raced and dread hung in the air as I quickly scanned the surroundings, realizing that it was our neighbor, Mr. Wallace, who had invaded our privacy. Our shock quickly turned into anger, and we decided to confront Mr. Wallace about his disturbing behavior. We knocked on his door and he opened it with that same eerie smile. His eyes seemed to hold a dark secret as we accused him of spying on us. Mr. Wallace initially denied any wrongdoing, insisting it must have been a misunderstanding. He claimed he had never entered our yard, but as we pressed him, his demeanor shifted. His smile twisted into a sinister grin and his voice took on a menacing tone. "Sometimes," he whispered, "neighbors should learn to keep their windows shut at night." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I knew we needed to involve the authorities. We reported the incident to the police and they promised to keep a close eye on Mr. Wallace. As the days passed, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It felt like we were trapped in our own home, constantly on edge. The presence of Mr. Wallace hung heavy in the air, like an unsettling fog that refused to lift. One night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, our house was plunged into darkness. The power had gone out, and we stumbled around with flashlights trying to locate the fuse box. That's when I heard a sound coming from the attic, a soft, rhythmic tapping that echoed through the walls. We climbed up to the attic, and there, in the dim light, we discovered a room filled with photos of us. They were taken through the windows of our home, pictures of us sleeping, eating, living our lives. It was a horrifying collection, and we realized that Mr. Wallace had been watching us for far longer than we'd ever imagined. We called the police once again, and this time they arrested Mr. Wallace, who was revealed to have a history of disturbing behavior. He'd been stalking us, an obsession that had spiraled into something truly sinister. As we watched him being led away in handcuffs, I couldn't help but feel a chilling sense of relief. The nightmare was over, but the scars of that creepy encounter would remain with us for a long time. Moving to California had been a dream come true, but our neighbor's unsettling obsession had turned it into a twisted, suspenseful reality. The day my family moved to that isolated countryside house marked the beginning of a chilling chapter in our lives. The house was nestled amid dense woods, and the nearest neighbors were a good 10 minutes away. At first, it seemed like an idyllic rural escape, but the tranquility would soon be shattered. During the first week, our days passed peacefully, and the silence of the countryside was a welcome change from the hustle and bustle of the city. However, as the days turned into weeks, strange objects began showing up around our property. Small trinkets, an old toy, and sometimes even notes with cryptic messages. It was as if someone was leaving them for us to find, and my parents, initially dismissing it as a harmless prank, soon grew concerned. One night, my parents decided to attend a family gathering in a nearby town, leaving me alone with my younger cousin. We were upstairs playing video games when we heard it, a shattering sound downstairs, like a window being broken. Panic surged through us, and we quickly realized that we were home alone, with an intruder inside the house. We locked ourselves in the room and hid in the closet, clutching baseball bats we'd found in the garage. Our hearts raced, and the eerie stillness of the house was shattered by the sound of our pounding hearts. Footsteps echoed through the house, slow and deliberate, and I could feel the tension in the air as the intruder drew closer, making their way upstairs with an eerie confidence. My cousin and I exchanged terrified glances, our eyes wide with fear, neither of us daring to make a sound. Then, in a hushed, sinister whisper, we heard it. "I know you're in there. I've been watching you for a couple of weeks." The words sent a shiver down my spine, and I gripped the bat with white-knuckled intensity. The doorknob jiggled, and my cousin's fingers dug into my arm. The door creaked open, revealing the silhouette of a man, dark and menacing. With a sickening sense of dread, I watched as he approached the closet, and his cold, unfeeling eyes met mine. He knew we were in there. We had no choice but to fight back. With trembling hands, we swung our bats at him as he reached for the closet door. The first strike hit his arm, making him yelp in pain. The second landed on his leg, and he crumpled to the ground, howling. The adrenaline surged through us as we dashed out of the closet, leaving the man writhing on the floor. We ran outside and hid in the dense underbrush near the house, our hearts pounding in our chests. From our hiding spot, we watched as the intruder finally emerged from the house, favoring his injured arm and leg. He cast one last menacing glare toward our hiding place before disappearing into the night. The police arrived shortly after, but despite a thorough search of the area, the man was never found. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. My family decided to move away from that house, haunted by the memories of that terrifying night. The isolated countryside had taken on a whole new meaning, and the countryside that once seemed peaceful had become a place of nightmares. But to this day, the memory of that whisper in the darkness and the chilling intruder who invaded our home remains etched in my mind, a reminder that danger can lurk in even the most isolated places. We moved away from that house, leaving behind the eerie memories and the unsettling sense of vulnerability.